They kidnapped my children. The HOA actually took them, claiming I had violated their sacred community rules. Why? Because they believed I had illegally purchased a home in a 55-plus community. Except I didn't. My lawyer proved my property was outside their jurisdiction, but the HOA didn't know who they were messing with because I'm not just any homeowner. I'm a federal judge, and they just committed the worst legal blunder of their pathetic lives. How far would you go if the HOA took your family? Welcome to my channel. If you love insane HOA revenge stories, hit that subscribe button, because this one is wild. Each morning, I brew my coffee while my kids chase each other around the kitchen island. Ava's laughter fills the hallways, while Malik hums the Spider-Man theme as he ties his shoes. Our home, a modest single-story house tucked at the edge of a quiet cul-de-sac, sits just outside the official HOA boundary, or so I thought. But typed in bold and clipped tone, it accused me of violating the community residency age policy. They gave me 7 days to remove the unauthorized minors or face administrative enforcement. I pulled my property deed, zoning maps, the purchase agreement. Everything clearly stated that my house sat outside the HOA's jurisdiction. I even consulted my closing attorney to be sure. His response was simple: they can't enforce that rule on your lot. Just a stamped seal, Sycamore Estates HO. My chest tightened, not out of fear but fury. They were trying to intimidate me, and I knew, deep down, this had nothing to do with zoning. It had everything to do when I stepped outside, just a quiet black man with 2 kids, no wife, and a pickup truck a few years too old. They thought I'd be easy to push around. They were wrong. But something terrible happened to my family. That Thursday felt like any other. Court wrapped early. I stopped by the grocery store, picked up Malik's favorite cereal and the chocolate milk Ava always sneaks before dinner. The sun hung low as I pulled into the driveway. Our porch light flickered on automatically, routine. But when I opened the door, the silence struck me first. No music, no cartoons, no footsteps, just the faint hum of the refrigerator. Their backpacks sat by the entryway, untouched. Ava's sneakers still by the door, laces half-tied. Malik's tablet charging on the kitchen counter. I called out. Nothing. I called their names again, louder this time. No response. I checked every room, empty beds, no signs of struggle, no broken windows, just absence. I grabbed my phone. Ava's rang twice before going to voicemail. Malik's went straight to unavailable. That's when the fear sank its teeth in. I called 911. The officers arrived quickly. I told them what I knew. They walked the house, took notes, asked if I had custody, which I did, fully and legally. They asked if the kids had any behavioral issues or if they might have run away. I told them no, absolutely not. Then I noticed it. Taped to the front door from the inside, folded neatly and sealed with a red HOA stamp. It read, "Due to non-compliance with community standards, the Sycamore Estates HOA has taken appropriate steps to ensure the neighborhood's integrity and safety. The children are in temporary custody under HOA supervision until the matter is resolved." I stood there, letter in hand, heart thudding in my ears. They didn't send a fine, they didn't file a complaint, they took my children. And in that moment, something in me shifted from confusion to certainty. This was war. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room, hands folded tightly between my knees, staring at the front door like it might open. I replayed everything, every HOA notice, every dismissive look from Karen Wills at the last neighborhood meeting, every time someone called me sir without meaning it. By morning, I was at the precinct, standing beside the lead investigator assigned to the case, Officer Reyes. To her credit, she didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Do you have any reason to believe the HOA would physically intervene with your children?" she asked. I handed her the letter. Her eyebrows rose. "This reads like an admission," she said. "Because it is," I told her. We canvassed the area, no security footage from my street. The HOA had conveniently denied all external camera access due to privacy concerns. But someone had seen something, I was sure of it. That someone was Mrs. Edith Coleman, me, 80-year-old neighbor 2 houses down. She opened the door slowly, adjusting her glasses. I saw them, she whispered. 2 men in navy suits, not uniforms, black SUV, tinted windows. They led the children out calmly. The girl looked back once, she cry out loud and don't want to follow them. My throat tightened. Which direction? She pointed. Toward the HOA clubhouse. I thanked her. Not with words, but with the look only a parent can give when another soul helps them hold on. Reyes accompanied me back to the Sycamore Estates community office. We didn't knock. Inside, sitting like she ran a Fortune 500 company, was Karen Wilsperls, smug smile, folder in hand. I assume you're here about the children, she said, voice like syrup over nails. You know exactly why we're here. They're being supervised for the good of the community. We call it interim guardianship, she said, as if this were just another HOA form. She didn't recognize me. Not yet. But I was done waiting. Karen Wills didn't stand when we entered. She didn't need to. She sat like she owned the room, like her HOA-issued authority outranked everyone else in the building. Her pearls caught the overhead light, her manicure impeccable, not a strand of her hair out of place. A woman rehearsed in appearances, rehearsed in power. She looked at me, then at Officer Reyes beside me, and offered a smile that was more condescending than cordial. Mr. Kane, she began, folding her hands, I expected you to come storming in. I understand your concern, but I assure you, the children are safe. Her voice dripped with fabricated calm. Not a hint of remorse, not even surprise. They were relocated as a temporary measure, she continued. For the stability of the community, we have strict standards in Sycamore Estates. The presence of unauthorized minors is a violation of our covenant. I didn't sit down. I didn't blink. I don't belong to your HOA, I said. My deed proves that. My attorney confirmed it. You have no jurisdiction over my property or my children. Karen waved her hand, as if brushing away an unimportant technicality. That's a legal gray area. And besides, the board voted unanimously to enact emergency authority to... I cut her off. To what? Kidnap my kids? She didn't even flinch. We prefer to call it interim guardianship, she said, as if that made any difference. I felt Officer Reyes shift beside me. Even she seemed stunned by the casual way Karen confessed to what amounted to a felony. I took a breath and reached inside my jacket. Karen's smile faded. Sir, Reyes cautioned. It's just my wallet, I replied calmly. But it wasn't just a wallet. I opened it slowly, deliberately, revealing a polished badge and an official ID. The seal of the United States District Court gleamed beneath the fluorescent light. Karen's eyes narrowed as she leaned forward to read it. Honorable Marshall D. Kane, Federal Judge, United States District Court, Eastern District of California. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. I let the silence do its work. I'm not just their father, I said quietly. I'm a sitting federal judge, and you've just confessed to a federal crime in front of a law enforcement officer. Karen's expression didn't crumble, it shattered. You can't be serious. She admitted to it, Reyes said, already pulling out her cuffs. That's enough for detainment. Karen stood abruptly, backing away. You don't understand, this isn't how this works. I understand exactly how this works, I said, better than you ever will. Reyes advanced. Karen Wills, you are under arrest for unlawful detainment, kidnapping, and abuse of authority. Place your hands behind your back. Karen's voice rose, desperate now. I was trying to preserve the community. I was protecting the integrity of our neighborhood. I stepped forward, just enough for her to hear me. You weren't protecting anything, I said. You were targeting us. You saw a black family, in a home you didn't think we deserved, and you acted like you had the right to erase us. She didn't deny it. She couldn't. Reyes clicked the cuffs on. The sound was sharp, final. As Karen was let out, a young HOA assistant stood frozen behind the desk, visibly shaken. I turned to her. Where did they take my children? She swallowed. Lakewood Christian Academy, room 107. Enrolled under a temporary placement code, Karen arranged it personally. 20 minutes later, I stood in front of a brick building with white trim and a neatly groomed lawn, the kind of school that sold an image of safety, but only for the right kind of families. The receptionist hesitated when I demanded entry. "We'll need to see custody papers," she said. Officer Reyes showed her badge. "We have legal cause, step aside." We pushed past the front desk. A tall woman in a gray suit intercepted us halfway down the hallway. "Sir, I need you to calm down. This is not the place for." "I'm a federal judge," I said flatly, "and unless you want to be charged with obstruction, you will lead me to room 107, now." The woman froze, then stepped aside. I opened the classroom door slowly. Inside, Malik sat on the floor, arms wrapped protectively around Ava. She looked tired, her socks didn't match, Malik's eyes were red. When they saw me, neither of them screamed or cried. They just stood and ran into my arms. And for the first time in 36 hours, I could breathe. The night I brought my children home, I didn't sleep. Not because I was afraid someone would come for them again, but because I couldn't turn off the weight pressing against my chest, the realization that this wasn't just about me or my family anymore. What happened to us was a symptom of something much larger, something designed, accepted, and quietly spread beneath the surface of so many neighborhoods across this country. And I had both the tools and the responsibility to confront it. The next morning, I put on my robe and walked into chambers, not for court, for war. I called my clerk, Angela, and asked her to pull every document we had on HOA oversight violations. Then I reached out to my former law school colleague, now a federal prosecutor, and told him I had a case that would need teeth. Within 48 hours, we had what we needed: a civil rights violation brief, a conspiracy charge, a federal kidnapping claim, and a motion to open a full financial audit of the Sycamore Estates HOA. Karen Wills wasn't going to face a misdemeanor. She was going to face federal indictment. We started with the obvious. The HOA's act of removing my children was criminal: the letter, the false enrollment, the transfer of minors without consent, but the deeper we dug, the more rot we uncovered. Karen and 2 board members had orchestrated dozens of coercive tactics over the past 5 years. They fined single mothers into foreclosure. They forged violation notices to pressure new buyers into abandoning contracts. They even manipulated neighborhood meetings to silence dissent voting on regulations behind closed doors, often affecting only Black or immigrant homeowners. In the file marked "discreet monitoring," we found photos surveillance of residents taken without their knowledge. Many were of me. The FBI opened a secondary investigation. The IRS followed. And suddenly, Sycamore Estates didn't look like a community anymore. It looked like a front. News spread fast. First local, then statewide. A federal judge's children kidnapped by an HOA? That headline alone set social media ablaze. Reporters called, lawyers emailed, civil rights groups offered to march if I gave the word. But I wasn't interested in noise. I was interested in change. Karen Wills' attorney reached out with a plea offer. I refused. "Your client didn't just break the law," I told him. "She used power she didn't have to control lives she didn't understand. That deserves more than leniency. It deserves precedent." The attorney went silent. So we pressed forward. We filed a class action motion on behalf of affected homeowners over the last decade. Families came out of silence. People who had been evicted, fined, harassed. They wrote statements, stood behind me, and lent their names to the cause. One elderly Filipino couple told me they'd been fined, $2,000 for drying laundry outside. It made the community look poor, the HOA had said. They'd been too afraid to fight. Not anymore. Meanwhile, I kept my family shielded. Ava and Malik stayed home, with a counselor I trusted. I didn't let cameras into our house. I didn't do interviews, because this wasn't a show. It was justice. Real, methodical, unforgiving justice. 3 weeks after filing, a federal grand jury returned indictments for Karen Wills and 2 other board members. The charges included kidnapping of minors, conspiracy to commit civil rights violations, wire fraud, false imprisonment, abuse under the color of law. Karen was arrested again, this time by federal agents. She didn't smile for the cameras. During the arraignment, she sat behind the glass, quiet and pale. Gone was the pearl-wearing HOA queen. In her place was a woman beginning to realize that there were laws bigger than the ones she made up in her cul-de-sac kingdom. As I stood before the judge, not as a presiding officer, but as a plaintiff, I looked directly at her. "I want no revenge," I said. "Only record. I want the law to show what happens when those entrusted with leadership turn it into leverage. Let this case live on paper, in history, so the next person who tries what she did will know exactly where it leads." Outside the courtroom, reporters swarmed. One asked, "Judge Kane, what's next?" I paused. Then I said, "We changed the law. Not just for me, for everyone they thought couldn't fight back. And that's exactly what I plan to do." It didn't take long for the empire to crack. By the end of the second week, federal subpoenas had pulled apart every financial record Sycamore Estates HOA had tried to bury. Their reserve accounts, empty. Their legal defense fund, privately misappropriated by Karen and 2 board members through shell invoices and fictitious contractors. The IRS launched its own case. County auditors followed. Neighbors who once looked at me like I didn't belong were now slipping letters under my door, anonymous confessions, desperate to distance themselves from what was coming. I read each one. I didn't forget a single name. Property values began to dip, fast. Homes once guarded by rigid HOA rules were now marked by uncertainty and scandal. Several board members quietly listed their homes, hoping to escape before the storm reached full strength. But I made it very clear, both in court and in private, any property seized as part of a civil forfeiture would not be sold to just anyone. I would buy them myself. Every one that was tied to fraudulent liens, every home that had been used to enforce fear. "I'm not just ending this," I told my clerk. "I'm buying their legacy and turning it into something that serves people, not punishes them." 3 weeks after Karen's arrest, the official sign at the Sycamore Estates HOA entrance was taken down by court order. It had once stood tall and polished, with gilded letters and proud shrubbery beneath. Now it lay in a heap beside a construction dumpster. I drove past it slowly. Ava sat in the passenger seat, looking out the window. "Are they gone?" "Not all of them," I said, "but enough to start over." She nodded and leaned back. For the first time in weeks, her shoulders relaxed. Some neighbors still avoided me. Others waved nervously, unsure of where they now stood in this new, post-HOA world. I didn't wave back. I wasn't here to make them comfortable. I was here to make them accountable. And whether they liked it or not, the neighborhood finally belonged to everyone who lived in it, not just the ones who fit a certain mold. I'd thought once the HOA crumbled, that would be the end of it. But it wasn't. Because for every Karen Wills that got exposed, there were 100 more hiding behind bylaws and board votes across the state, people weaponizing policy as a shield for prejudice. What happened to my children wasn't a fluke. It was a system working exactly as it was designed to. So I did what judges do best. I built a case not in court, but in the state legislature. The HOA Accountability Act started as a single-page draft on my kitchen counter. Ava sat across from me, coloring quietly, while Malik tapped at a puzzle app on his tablet. Every so often, Ava would glance at the page and ask, "Is that the one that stops people like her?" "Yes, baby," I said, "it is." The bill had 3 core provisions. Jurisdictional limits. No HOA could enforce rules beyond clearly defined property boundaries, and no gray area language would be valid. Family Protection Clause. HOAs could never interfere in matters involving custody, child residency, or family structure without a court order. Transparency. Audit requirement. Mandatory annual financial disclosures reviewed by an independent third party, or risk forfeiture of authority. I knew it would rattle cages. That was the point. I began meeting with lawmakers. Some were polite but hesitant. Others had stories of their own constituents harassed, families driven out, veterans fined for flying the flag too high. Momentum grew fast. By the time the committee hearing rolled around, we had bipartisan support and a growing wave of media attention. Local networks picked up the story. Federal judge fights HOA abuse after children kidnapped. But I didn't take interviews. This wasn't about fame. It was about leverage. Karen Will's trial proceeded in the background. She pled not guilty, of course, and tried to claim she acted in good faith. Her defense attorney argued it was all a misunderstanding, an overzealous attempt to maintain order. The jury didn't buy it. Guilty on all counts. 15 years, no parole. After the verdict, I returned to the Capitol for the final hearing on the HOA Accountability Act. The gallery was full, reporters lined the back. I took my place at the front of the chamber, behind the podium. "I'm not here as a judge today," I said. "I'm here as a father." I told them what happened. I didn't embellish. I didn't dramatize. I let the facts speak, and the silence in the room told me they were finally listening. The bill passed the Assembly. Then the Senate. And finally, the governor signed it into law. It was the first legislation of its kind in the state, and within 6 months, 4 other states introduced similar bills under the same name. The HOA Accountability Act became a national model for reform. And my family? We finally got some peace. Ava returned to school. Malik started taking piano lessons. The house felt safe again, not because of alarms or fences, but because I'd made sure no one could ever try to take them again. But I wasn't done. I started a foundation, the Fair Living Project, offering legal aid to families bullied or harassed by HOAs. We hired attorneys, built a hotline, and launched public awareness campaigns. Because the truth is, what happened to me could happen to anyone who doesn't look right on a cul-de-sac. And I don't plan on letting that truth go quiet. It's strange how quiet justice can be. No parades, no loud applause, just the quiet return of things that should have never been taken. Ava's laughter echoing from the backyard. Malik humming while doing his homework. Me, sitting on the porch, a cup of coffee in hand, watching them live without fear. That silence, that peace is louder than any verdict I've ever delivered from the bench. And it's what I fought for. The HOA clubhouse, the very building where Karen Wills once signed off on my children's removal, is something else now. We turned it into a place for everyone. No more gated meetings, no more exclusive policies. Now, it's a community hub, ESL classes for immigrants, after-school tutoring, small business workshops. Even a weekend garden for kids who've never touched soil before. We didn't demolish the space, we repurposed it. Left the walls that once excluded to now welcome. I never sought revenge. What I wanted and still want is responsibility, accountability, the kind that outlives headlines. When Karen was sentenced, I wasn't in the courtroom. I already had my closure. But I did watch from my office, quietly. 15 years, no parole. She didn't look up once. I started the Fair Living Project a few months after the trial, a legal fund to protect families targeted by abusive HOAs. We've taken on 24 cases in 6 different states. And that's just the beginning. Because this isn't just about what happened on one street in one neighborhood. It's about every family who's ever been told, "You don't belong here," simply because of how they look, what language they speak, or how their children laugh too loudly. One afternoon, Malik asked me, "Dad, why did they do it? Why us?" I thought for a long moment before answering. "Because they thought no one would stop them," I said. "They thought we'd stay quiet." He nodded. "But we didn't." "No," I smiled, "we didn't." So now, when I step out of the house and see neighbors waving without fear in their eyes, when I see new families moving in, and old ones finally feeling seen, I know this fight was worth it. And if it ever happens again anywhere, I'll be ready. Because I made a promise. To my children. To my community. To anyone who's ever been underestimated. They will not be erased. Not on my watch. For a home. But in giving the town his stillness, his steadiness, and his unshakable dignity, he gave them something more valuable than order. He gave them a better way to live with each other. And that was his quiet strength.